Hey there, I'm Jason, and this video is going to show you some simple repairs that you can do on the flute. Here's how you find the serial number on your flute to help make your inventory. The first place you want to look is on this upper tenon where the head joint goes in. If it's not printed there, sometimes it's printed just under that tenon and occasionally down here above the foot joint tenon. When you're teaching students to assemble the flute, it's important that you teach them the proper technique. You never want a student to rock the part back and forth as they're putting it together, especially the foot joint. They place it on the end and with a gentle back and forth twisting motion, put the pieces together. That'll minimize damage and make sure that the instrument works well into the future. Because most of the flutes that you can buy are made with silver, it will tarnish sometimes. That means that it needs special cloth to correct the issues. Make sure that you get a silver polishing cloth that's available from a music store or Yamaha or another reputable dealer. And then you only want to polish the parts that don't go under the keys. You want to use these open areas only and clean those up, and the top of the keys themselves. If you go underneath those pads, you could cause tearing or damage. The most common repair you need to do on the flute is the adjustment of springs. Just underneath each of these rods, you'll see a series of what look like little needles that are actually springs that pop the keys back up after you release them. Sometimes those springs become detached and they'll stick out from the little nub that holds them in place. When this happens, you need a tool that's going to grab that spring and pull it back into place. If you don't have a specialized tool for that, sometimes a small crochet hook can do the same thing. All you do is slide the tool underneath the spring, hook it, and pull it around the nub so that that key will pop back up. The most common springs that will pop are the ones that activate the trill keys, whose pads are right up here toward the head joint on the flute. When that happens, a student will play a note and the only sound that will come out is the note C sharp, no matter what keys they put down. For that one, just make sure you pop those springs back into place and that should fix the problem. The pads on the flute are a little different than other instruments. When you see that there's wear, that wear can either look like cracks on the pad or that membrane that's on that lower face of the pad starts to peel off. When that happens, unfortunately, it's a repair you can't do yourself. Each of the pads has a screw that goes through the center of it, and under the pad is a shim that has measurements down to the thousandths of an inch. It's not a repair you can do for yourself, so it's for the best if you send those in to the repair shop and let a professional do it. When we number and engrave our inventory, we always want to make sure that there's an engraving on the head joint and the body so that those two pieces are always matched up, because head joints are not interchangeable. However, even with that amount of caution, sometimes you get problems fitting the head joint into the tenon. When that happens, it's often caused by some moisture or grit that's gotten onto the head joint or inside the body that needs to be cleaned off. When that happens, just take a paper towel and rub the outside of the head joint tenon to remove any detritus that might be there. But you also have to make sure that you do the same thing on the inside of the body joint where the head joint fits in. Take that paper towel and clean out the inside of that until it's nice and dry. Then try fitting the joints together again and they should move much smoother. Another problem that comes along with the head joint on the flute is the head crown that attaches to the head cork within the body of the head joint. This is something that's adjusted at the repair shop, and it's not something that students should ever be fiddling with because it can truly upset the tuning of the instrument. The cork within the head joint needs to be fit snugly. It should not adjust easily. And if you notice that it's starting to come in or out, that means that it needs to be replaced, once again at the repair shop by a professional. If your flute is out of tune, even after you've done all of the regular adjustments, it's possible that the tuning cork within here needs an adjustment as well. To do that, you're going to need a swab stick. you're going to take the far end of the swab stick away from where the cloth goes in and place it into the head joint only until it meets where the cork is. When you look inside the blowhole, you're going to see that that swab stick has a line on it. If that line is centered, then the cork is adjusted properly. Because of how fragile that membrane is on those pads, we need to make sure that we swab the flute every time we play it. You have the option between a pad saver that looks like this, or a swab that has this stick with a cloth going through it. Either way, you need to make sure that there's a location for that swab or pad saver within the case that will not rest upon any of the keys, because it could damage the keys by bending them. The tiny screws in a flute can easily be lost if they fall out, so it's important to check your flute every time the student plays it. When they put it together, they just take a look over the instrument for any screws that look loose and bring them to you, the teacher's attention. While there are some screws on a flute that deal with regulation and shouldn't be adjusted too much, you'll get to know which screws can and cannot be adjusted, and a quick tightening with one of those fine screwdriver sets should take care of business. Lastly, ensure that when students put the parts of the instrument back into the case, that they fit in there properly, with the A-flat key pointing toward the middle of the case. If it goes the other way around, it's really easy to bend the soft metal of the flute keys. As always, anytime you do a repair to your instrument, make sure you log it in your inventory.